Alright, there we go. You should be able to hear me now. Looks like I had just some weird little issue there with my mic setup, but we're all good now. Should be able to hear me, yeah. Alright, hello everybody. Welcome to A Walking Pace reading through the book of Matthew. We are session 20, and we're in chapter 6 of Matthew now. I won't say chugging along. We have been walking along through chapter 5 especially. It's taken us a while, but we're here. Chapter 6, Sermon on the Mount will be, it'll take us 10 more sessions or so, but we'll be, excuse me, out of it before too long. Just a month or two. Already taken a while, so we'll probably jump right into this one. If my voice sounds kind of funny, that's because I have a sore throat and a stuffy nose right now. I've been kind of sick for the last few days, but feeling a good deal better today, which is nice. It's also been beautiful outside, so spending a lot of time outside, and I think that's actually helped. For once. I have terrible allergies, so usually being outside actually makes me feel terrible. But this week it's been really nice. Spring might be kind of wrapping up, so the allergies might be gone for a little bit, which is great. Hello, Barbara. Alright. Let us get started here. Alright, I'm going to be honest, I have also been very busy these past 2 weeks. Part of that is because I was sick, but just a lot of stuff going on. Had college things like starting to, have to sign up for the college I'm planning to attend, and was out of town last week, 2 weeks ago maybe, and so that's part of the reason I didn't get to do the pod last week. I probably could have, but I just didn't do it. Didn't really have time. But we are back now, and we are going to jump right into this. We got verses 1 through 4 of chapter 20. This is HCSB, if anybody's wondering. That's just the translation I'm most comfortable with. I don't know if it's necessarily the best one, but it's the one I like to use. Alright. Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of people to be seen by them. Otherwise, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So whenever you give to the poor, don't sound a trumpet before you as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, to be applauded by people. I assure you, they have got their reward. But when you give to the poor, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Okay. So this is interesting passage. That second or third verse, the last part there is quoted quite often actually, sometimes out of biblical contexts, like just one of those sayings we've adopted from the Bible. There are a lot of them actually. Do we need to go back to the last slide for any reason? I don't think so. So just a quick recap. We've been talking about how Jesus has, he came in, his recent talk has been about explaining how he is not here to destroy the law, but to fulfill it. And he's also kind of been building up towards, right, this whole sermon so far really has been about how, the religious frame that the Pharisees have tried to teach isn't correct, right? That's been kind of the main point of the whole sermon up until now, right? It's not about, being angry or lusting after someone in your heart is just as much a sin as doing it on the outside, right? I'm not here to destroy the law. I'm here to fulfill it and expand the law, right? The Beatitudes, right, all of those are things that the Pharisees, right, a lot of them and a lot of the people in that culture and in culture throughout the ages, right, we've talked about how the Beatitudes are very counterculture. They were counterculture back then, they're counterculture now. Just about how the Beatitudes, right, To the Pharisees, a lot of what he was saying in those would be very shocking, and to the people, it was a different way of thinking about things, right? So now we transition kind of straight into this trying to think, I won't say debate, fight, no, this, I don't have any better way to say it right now other than like Jesus versus the Pharisees, but that's not quite correct, right? And so one of the things the Pharisees would do, okay, and that people would do in the culture, sometimes we point fingers at like, oh, it was always the Pharisees. It wasn't always like just the Pharisees. Like, this was kind of what all of the religious leaders and people would do at the time, which the Pharisees were the most notable, so that's why they usually get blamed. Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of people to be seen by them. Right, the important clarifications here. This sentence is one of those sentences that when you read it the first time, and if you're not paying attention, it sounds really weird. Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of people to be seen by them. That sounds really weird, right? Like, didn't we just talk about how not too long ago, part of our purpose as Christians was to be a light and for people to look at us and to see us, and we were supposed to be this light drawing them in, that we were supposed to be the salt of the earth, right? Didn't we just talk about this? What do you mean I'm not supposed to practice righteousness in front of people, right? Like, oh, if I'm in front of people, I'm supposed to act horrible. No. The important part of this sentence is the way the syntax, is structured, and that last part there, right? To be seen by them. Unless I'm very mistaken, let me check real quick my Greek. In order, yeah, okay. So my Greek translation, this the new Greek/English interlinear New Testament. So this is about as word for word of a translation as you can get from the Greek. But be careful the righteousness of you not to practice before men in order to be seen by them. Bingo. Did you catch it, right? The point is not that you're supposed to only do good things in the background, or that no one's ever supposed to see you do something good, or that you're not supposed to be practicing righteousness in front of people, like you absolutely are. The point is the motive. Why are you practicing your righteousness in front of people? Okay, is it in order to be seen by them, or is it in order to be seen by God? And which, that's not exactly correct, because God sees no matter what, so you can't do something in order for him to see it. But, I mean, kind of, you get the point. Otherwise, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. Okay, doing good things just so that other people see you doing these good things, and so that you feel better, and so that you get their praise, is not doing the Father's will. Right? You will not get a reward from your Father in heaven. And that is very firm. And in fact, I would go so far as to say, this is something that even sometimes I probably don't take as seriously as it should be. Right? You will have no reward from your Father in heaven. Right? That is, it's not like a sin to do this. That's not what he's saying. But he will go on to say, they already have their reward. People who act this way. Right? And so don't think acting this way is just, oh, it's something we all do, we kind of have to work on it, but it's not a huge deal. No, like, this is something that needs to be addressed, and it's not the goal of your Christian walk. This is not what you're supposed to be living like. So there is a difficult fine line here. Because as humans, it is sometimes hard for us, shocking as it may be, to understand our own motives. Sometimes you'll do something and you'll say to yourself, I did that to please God. But really, maybe you don't even know, but like you kind of tricked yourself into thinking you did it for God, but really you did it because you wanted somebody to, see you, or because you wanted to do it because it made you feel good, or whatever. It's, I would say this could potentially be one of the largest issues that the modern Reformation, post-Reformation church struggles with, especially like people in high positions in the church. High positions as in like pastors, deacons, people who are there all the time, people who are, trying to be good Christians. I think this is a struggle that the majority of them have, including myself, is that we do good things a lot of the time not for the right reasons. Sometimes we don't even do them for terrible reasons, right? But is the reason you're doing these good things because it pleases God and because God said so, right? That should always be the primary reason. And I would say also because it makes you feel good. I don't think that's a bad reason, by the way, because the Holy Spirit, part of the Holy Spirit is so that it'll convict us to do the right thing, and that by being sanctified by God, our goals will align with His goals, and so that we'll enjoy doing His work. That's not wrong, okay? That's actually great. If you're enjoying doing good things, you're on the right track, okay? But are you enjoying them because of doing them, or are you enjoying them because of the rewards you're getting from other people or from circumstances, right? So do I need to give some examples? I'm trying to think here. Yeah, some examples, right? No, I think we get the gist. Actually, let's read the examples that Jesus gives. So whenever you give to the poor, don't sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, to be applauded by people. So, something that they would do, right, is if they're going to give to the poor, right, they would make a big ordeal out of it. And the main point they were giving to the poor was so that other people would applaud them and say, oh, look how good of a job they're doing, or look how good they are, or, oh, they're not horrible people, they care about the poor too. Does that sound familiar? Yeah, maybe it does, because this is exactly what modern culture still does, You'll see in ad campaigns, especially for political people, about, oh, they help the poor, or this is what they do for minorities, or people who are homeless, or people near you, or like you, this is what they do. You see, this is absolutely still the way most politics runs, to be honest, and the way, rich businesses and things like that, they do this too. They'll say, oh, we're giving such and such away to the poor, but it's mostly just to, increase audience approval, or to stay on the good side of the community or their workers or something. It almost never do corporations do things like this for good reasons, which, not too surprising. Corporations aren't the same as real people, right? That's the way of the world, right? That's the way business works. That's the way the world works. And trying to say, oh, I wish it wasn't like that, well, then you wish for heaven, because it's never not going to be like that on this earth. But people still do this sometimes. I think, trying to think of an example if I've ever seen one. I can't think of a particularly good example of someone showing off their giving, but I can think of examples where you feel pressured into giving because of the people around you, not because of the Holy Spirit, and because you actually want to give. What do I mean by this? I'm thinking the best example I can think of is like those organizations that are raising money for like people across the country or something, and it's like they'll be, everybody stand up if you want to give or something, and then you kind of feel like out of place and awkward when you don't stand up. That peer pressure of like, oh, maybe I should stand up because like I'm a good Christian, I have to be doing this. but like you're really only doing it because you want to stand up and have everybody see you stand up. There's an example for you. I don't think this exactly is as big a problem nowadays. I think it's less so giving and more so actions that people do. But Jesus, what he says after that, it's one of my favorite lines ever. I assure you, they've got their reward. I just love it. I actually love that line so much. It makes me so, like, weirdly. It's just, okay, I'll be honest, I love good writing and good speech and good rhetoric and stuff. This is, like, a great one. But it also, I just love the fairness of it, right? It's not that doing bad things is ever bad. But the difference is that they have chosen what reward they prioritize. People who do good things to get reward from people are prioritizing reward from people. They're saying, I want people to love me more than I want you to love me, God. Or just as, more than you love me, God, right? And so they get their reward already, right? If you don't act this way, if you purposely give in such a way that you aren't being applauded by other people, that other people don't know it was you, that other people aren't praising you, then your reward, you're going to get compensated, as a way to say it, but that's a little too monetary. That's a little too like mechanical. I don't know. You're going to get your reward right in heaven, because God sees all of the deeds and rewards. One of my favorite lines, by the way, from Ecclesiastes that I found not too long ago, used it in my sermon. God, sees all and punishes every deed of man, both good and bad. Punishes might not have been the word. It might have been there's a word I'm thinking of, and I'm forgetting what it is. It's sorry, I'm searching real quick, so that's why if you're hearing clicking in the back. We'll bring every deed into judgment. There we go. Bring every deed into judgment. Because he's not punishing you for doing good things, but every deed is brought into judgment. Every deed has a consequence, if you're going to use the more technical version of that word, right? You get what you are owed, and whether that is death, because it's sin, or whether that is eternity in heaven and good things in time spent with God, because it's good things, right? God will reward those who follow him, right? And let's keep going. But when you give to the poor, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Footnote from my Bible, I think, was some translations say, who sees in secret will reward you openly. Right? And I actually kind of like that. I'm trying to figure out, what does that openly word mean to me? For one thing, it's the parallel that, like, you giving in secret, it's not always going to have to be in secret. Like, one day you will get to heaven and God will say, well done, and you're going to be embraced openly for what you've done all these years. There's also, I think, even on this earth, right? God sometimes rewards people openly for doing his deed. All of those great stories about people, going across the world and serving him, and horrible things happen to them, and they go through so much pain and trial, and then they come out of it, and suddenly they're rewarded for doing good things in secret, for doing God's will, even when it was not to their benefit. That verse kind of in the middle that I sort of skipped over real quick. But when you give to the poor, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. This is one of those verses that... Sorry, excuse me. My nose got stuffy there. This is one of those that makes me feel like there's some like Hebrew culture context that we don't know, because this is like a saying that doesn't really make sense to me, but I get what it's trying to say, right? Don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Essentially, the way I've always heard this explained is that like your giving should not be this pre-planned ordeal most of the time. And I don't know. Maybe that's not the right translation. I've heard it explained before that like most of your giving should be that impulsive giving of like, you know, I'm going to give this suddenly, right? And even if nobody else knows, even if let's just say like the rest of my family doesn't know, even if my budget doesn't know, right? Even if I didn't plan for this at all, I'm gonna give, right? Because I feel like giving right now and I see a need, which I think is beautiful, by the way, that kind of giving. But I don't know if that's actually the best translation, like best take from that. And I don't know how strong that should be. Like, should you only give like that? You know, is it not a good thing to plan out your giving, you know? And actually, you know what? I do think I agree with that. I think for the most part, we make our giving a checklist in modern society sometimes. You know, oh, it's tax season, let me give some money to these charities, or ooh, I tithe this much every month, you know, or it just comes out automatically. I mean, sure, I understand the ease of convenience, and I tithe that way too, partially just because I'm going to be honest, I don't have that much money anyways, but right, I'm a high schooler who works 2 days a week, but sorry, excuse me. I do think maybe even tithing isn't the issue, but I do think there should be giving. You should be giving from your heart when you feel called to sometimes. And whether that means, you know, on top of tithing, whether that means, you know, you take some out of your tithe weeks when you give extra in other places, or however it works out for you, whether your tithing is exclusively, you know, giving on the spot, more often than not, that is the kind of giving that impacts people the most, right? So, yeah, and I think I love this whole, I love the idea and the passion and the goodwill behind those sort of organizations and things like that ask, you know, just support this organization, you know, support this child every month, or support us every month, or whatever. Here's my question, though. A lot of the times, I think those kind of giving... Okay, let me think about this. How am I trying to say this? No, actually, I think those are good ways of giving, because it is kind of following this practice, right? You give, let's say you give to a radio station. You're not giving flashingly. I mean, those radio stations sometimes call out people's names, but if you're giving for your name to get called out on the radio, then you have you need attention, because that's crazy. But you're giving in secret. No one's gonna know that you're supporting this radio station, but down the road that radio station may impact people's lives. I mean, obviously that's not like a perfect example, because I do think those radio stations, if I'm being honest, kind of overhype themselves. Like, they don't do that much for people, in my opinion. Like, if somebody needs to hear God's speaking to them, they can sing their own songs. They could pull it up on YouTube, you know. Like, those radio stations are awesome, but like, there are much better ways, I think, to support God's kingdom sometimes, but to each their own, you know, wherever you feel called. And maybe that's me taking it for granted, because it's something I've always had, right, is those radio stations. Supporting those missionaries across the country and people in other places, right? You're supporting, for the most part, in a way where no one's going to know it was you. I do think there's always that part of you that wonders, you know, how much is my giving actually impacting people? And I do still think that the best way to give is to give to someone, face to face. I'm going to be honest. Not because you want them to praise you. You're not giving to be seen by them. But you are giving and they are seeing you give, and that is impacting them, right? It's not that you're giving so that they applaud you and so that you get a reward from them of some kind, right? You're giving because that's what your Father wants, and you want a reward from your Father in heaven, right? And because you want to obey him, and because you love him, and because you love these people. But you're giving, when they see you give, that means something to them. As an example, you give $10 to a radio station, okay? Or you give $10 to a homeless person off the street. Let me ask you, which one do you think is impacting people's lives more? Right? I'm just saying, like, walking up to somebody and giving them $50 could change someone's day. It could change someone's week, And that, I feel like we do make our giving a little bit too... there's a word I'm looking for. Mechanical is okay. What's that word that's like a business or a machine? There's a word. I have it on the tip of my tongue, but I'm not getting it. This happens to me all the time, by the way. We make our giving too... Yeah, whatever. Mechanical. It's not great. You know what I mean. We make it like a business, like we're running some business, or like it's just part of our, part of our routine, part of our. Now I'm blanking on this word too. What's your, what's the name for your, not checking account, your. Holy cow, guys! I'm sorry. I'm just blanking on these words. You're where you keep track of all the money that you spend. It's your. Well, anyways, let's move on. I think you get the point. Let's move on. All right, verse 5. This is why I need more people on the chat. By the way, people, jump in the chat so you can help me when I forget about these kind of words, please, because it happens to me like every stream. I forget something. All right, verse 5 through 8. Whenever you pray, you must not be like the hypocrites, because they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by people. I assure you, they've got their reward. But when you pray, go into your private room, shut your door, and pray to your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. When you pray, don't babble like the idolaters, since they imagine they'll be heard for their many words. Don't be like them, because your Father knows the things you need before you ask him. Okay. Starting in verse 5. Whenever you pray, so continuing, right? Whenever you pray. Okay, now we're talking about prayer, and this is more the actions half that I'm talking about, whenever you do something good and holy that you're supposed to do for God, right? Like prayer, you must not be like the hypocrites, okay? Because they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by people, right? In order to be seen by people. I assure you, they've got their reward. When you pray, go into your private room, shut your door, and pray to your Father who is in secret. Okay, notice a small difference here. When he said, when you give, he didn't tell you to, go give in a private room. I mean, for one thing, that kind of doesn't make sense in that time especially. But for another thing, I think there is a difference. Prayer is supposed to be you talking to God. And I think to do it effectively, you do need to be in an intimate space where you're focusing on God, right? And you can be with him, okay? I mean, I do think prayers when a group of people pray together is super powerful. Do not get me wrong, especially like a group of Christians. However, I think like praying out, I'm trying to figure out like what the idea even was here back then. Praying like out loud to a crowd of people is really weird, to be honest. Like, what was the idea there? Like, how could it not be blatantly you trying to gain attention? Like, how is what else is the purpose of that kind of praying? Like, so that everybody else is like made holier by your prayer or something, or like feels better about their day because they saw you praying. I don't even know. Like, what is the point of that? I was gonna make a parallel to like street preaching, or I was thinking of that. I wasn't gonna make that parallel, but like they're not even similar, because with street preaching, at least you're actually trying to change people's lives and tell them the truth. With this kind of prayer, I'm not even sure what the purpose was. Sorry, I had to take a drink there. So it's once again kind of the same idea, right? You're not praying. Okay, so examples of this kind of thing. Definitely when I was a kid, I was the sort of kid that like whenever they asked who was going to pray, I was the one who raised my hand and prayed. In a large part because I wanted to like, okay, none of the other, okay, imagine like 4th through 6th grade boys. None of those boys are standing up and raising their hand to pray. It is not happening. Like every single time, no one would say they want to pray. Okay, I mean this even happens with like middle school and high school boys, but like when it's young graders, especially like, and I was living in the South too, like these rough and tough boys, like dude, no one was praying. Okay, so I was like the smart wordy kid, and I was also like kind of one of the more like righteousy kids. Okay, so I was the one who always raised my hand and was like, oh, I'll pray. I'm trying to think now back what my motives were and whether or not I had it in the right place, but I think there were definitely times when I would pray mostly just because I wanted like them to see, oh, you know how good I was doing, because I would be the one who would pray. But I also think there are times, you know, when someone might pray just because they want to set that example, like, guys, we can pray, you know, or I'll do it because nobody else will. That's not really like the best motive to pray. Like, if you're praying, you want to make it about God, and it needs to be about God, right? Because this is a conversation with God. You should never be praying with any other motive besides you wanting to talk to God. I stand on that very firmly. This is why, by the way, I'm not the hugest fan of those sort of like routine prayers, you know, when it's sort of like, oh, it's time for dinner, let's pray. That's fine. That's amazing, actually. But don't make it a chore, right? Sit down for a second and make sure that when you make that prayer, you're making it about God and you're talking to God. And it's not just, okay, who wants to pray tonight? Oh, you will? Okay, let's go. And then we'll eat, right? When people, for this is a youth group kind of thing, right? Or children's ministries, right? You ask, will one of you close us out in prayer or something? If no one wants to pray, then just pray, you know? Like, I love when an adult says, okay, none of you guys got much to say, that's fine, I'll close us out, you know? And it's great, because it takes that, if you make one of the students pray, then it becomes a chore, right? It becomes, oh, who's going to be the one to pray this week, right? That's not what prayer is supposed to be. Prayer is supposed to be, if one of the people wants to pray, that's amazing, because they have something they want to tell God and they want to talk to him about. But if not, don't make them pray, right? if they don't feel led to pray, then don't make them pray, right? I mean, shoot, if nobody feels led to pray, then let's not pray. I mean, like, I think that's even better than doing it without the right motives, right? I think this is one of those qualms that I have with the way that, like, most, like, Baptist, Church of Christ, non-denominational, modern, more, like, contemporary churches are. This is one of my qualms with them, is the way they treat prayer sometimes. Not my favorite, you know. And that's just one of those things, you know, whatever. But there you go. I think prayer should be taken much more seriously than people take it. You know, this is one of those things, the more I've grown in my faith, That might not be right. The more I read and listen to the Bible and make my own conclusions, the more that I notice that the Catholic way of doing things was kind of right in some ways, right? Not in all ways. There were definitely issues. The biggest issue with the Catholic way of doing things was the whole, state and church being the same, and the Catholics had too much, the priests and the higher ups had too much power, and they were taking the gospel away from people and all that kind of jazz. There were definitely issues, especially with like the medieval Catholic Church, right? But I do think they have some things right, and I think one of them is the respect that they show for prayer and for communion. Like, you can say what you will about, but God doesn't care if you talk to him whenever. Yeah, that's absolutely true. But like, there's something about walking in and everyone having their heads bowed and in the same posture and taking their time and letting the deacon pray or something. There's something about that makes you reframe things in that time about, okay. And obviously I haven't actually been to a Catholic service yet. I've only like seen one maybe. But there's something about that idea, at least to me, of like how that would reframe the way you think about the prayer, right? Because the opposite spectrum of taking it too flippantly, I think, is far worse. One of my favorite things we do sometimes is, let's make a prayer circle or something, and everybody will stand in a circle, and it'll just be, whenever you're ready, pray. And it's amazing because not everybody even says anything, but everybody being there at the same time, and when people are led, they say something out loud, and it's just awesome because somebody will say something, and then you'll realize you have something more to say about that, and I love that. I love it. We've babbled a lot. I've been talking about things that don't necessarily aren't talked about in this passage, but there were things I've been thinking about recently, actually. And I think this is kind of the point, right? Make your prayer about you and God, right? It should be a prayer to your Father, okay? Go pray by yourself in a private room if you need to. You actually probably should be taking time out of your day to go pray to your God alone. And making your prayer or making any of your religious actions, because I think that's where this kind of thing happens the most nowadays, right? Oh, we're going to do this or this or this, but it's really just because we want to be seen by other people. Or, I'll do that, but it's really just because you want everybody else to know that you're willing to do it, right? They have the reward, Your Father who sees in secret will reward you. And then he gives some more instructions on prayer, and I've already kind of hinted on these kind of things. When you pray, don't babble like the idolaters. Is that correct? That sounds right. Sounds good to me. Babble like the idolaters. Is it idolaters? Nah, idolaters. Since they imagine they'll be heard for their many words. Right. People outside of the Christian faith, this instantly makes me think of the Mount Carmel story, right? When they're like dancing and cutting themselves and screaming to the sky to get their God to answer them. We don't have to do that, luckily. When we pray, it's not about, making it a show or saying all these words so that God will hear us. God is going to hear us, and he knows anyways, right? It's about, a lot of it is about taking the time to respect him and talk to him more than anything else. Honestly, I don't have much else to say on that. I think it really kind of speaks for itself, Sometimes we definitely, and I've done this too, we'll just start if you're giving a prayer out loud, you'll start like rambling just to try to kind of make the prayer longer, finish it roundly. And once again, I think that's more so an issue of the fact that you're playing out loud when you don't feel like you have much to say than anything else. Once again, not a huge fan of that. thing. Like, I don't think praying out loud is not a bad thing at all, actually. Like, it's a very good thing, and I think it's a very powerful thing to, like, for instance, laying the hands on somebody. Okay, that sounded weird. You get what I mean. Like, and, we're ordaining this person for this purpose, or we're going to pray over this group or something. That's very powerful, but there are definitely times when people are asked to pray out loud when they don't have anything to say, and that it's just there's nothing good coming out of that. All right. I think that'll wrap it up for this one. I rambled all over the place on you guys. This topic on prayer definitely got me kind of going, but I think in general what I was trying to say is how we today might pray when we don't do it for the best reasons, right? And that's what I was trying to get to, and I think it made sense. So thank you for tuning in. We are now, hey, look at that, we're already 8 verses through chapter 6. Hopefully chapter 6 does not take us quite as long as chapter 5. I do want to start getting through the Bible a little bit here. Wait a second, why does that one say session 19? Dang it, my slides say the wrong session. Oh well. But I hope you all have a great week. Thank you for tuning in. Once again, all of this kind of stuff, this is me, grasping with these ideas and topics and searching for what I believe through all this. It's less so even me trying to give you ways to change your lives. It's more so about asking questions than anything else. It's exploring. The podcast that I stole this idea from is called Exploring the Lord of the Rings, right? And it's about reading through the Lord of the Rings as slowly as possible, and we're trying to dissect each sentence and learn what we can about, Tolkien's process and where he was going with this and what each of these things mean and what is the most likely interpretation for all of these things. That's kind of what we're doing here with the Bible. Obviously, the Bible's a little bit different, but that same sort of idea, what is Jesus really saying here? What were his intentions with the words? What were the point of these certain sentence structures? How is this all working together? And then what can we learn from this? What makes the most sense as the interpretation of each of these sentences? So I hope you enjoyed the podcast, and